So, the last session of the day, and this is what I was really worried about, that it is Friday evening. I didn't want to keep people from their beers or, of course, coffee and, whatever. And we're going to talk about ROIs, right? And you heard all of that, econometrics and all of that. So that was my fear that people, this is what you are going to think, that, ROIs, returns on investment, econometrics, statistics, how does it matter? True, how does it matter? So that's why I'm here to, give you a little bit of flavor of why you think it doesn't matter, but it does, and essentially giving you a flavor of why you should really start caring about it. So I'm directly going to go into my ROI obsession. So I'm a little bit self-obsessed, so hence I'm going to start with my story, which is, you heard, right, in that little bit of introduction, that this is truly my professional hazard. But when I little bit thought about where this firstly, where did this profession come from, why the professional hazard and all of that, I realized that it is very deep rooted in my system, extremely deep rooted. So a little bit of a root cause analysis hence led me to understand that I was broken at a very young age. I wasn't born like this. This happened to me. ROIs happened to me. I live and breathe ROIs. I wasn't born like this. I was born like any of you, but this just happened to me, and I'll tell you why, okay? So I'm going to take you a little bit back to my childhood, just a little bit back. I was like 7, 8 years old, which is a few years back. So this was my first brush with ROIs. What happened was, I was, like I said, 7, 8 years old, and this was during the time of Durga Puja. So I'm Bengali, right? Madhubanti Banerjee, no guesses there. So during Durga Puja, you have this, those little flowers, it's called Shuli. Those of you who watched that movie October would know, it's all over the poster. So my grandmother, she called me and my cousin and said, both of us 7, 8 years old, and asked us to go and collect these Shuli flowers, to make garlands. It's a very pretty thing to do, and very girly and all of that. Unfortunately, I wasn't one of those. I wasn't a flower girl. So I went out with my cousin nevertheless. I collected these flowers. I was back in about 10-15 minutes. The collection of flowers, this was what I collected. My cousin, on the other hand, was out for another, 20 minutes, half an hour or so, came back with that collection. I am also competitive, right? I said, impossible. I have collected better flowers. And, whatever little, a 7-year-old can give logic to. So my grandmother was really plagued, with this fight. And then my grandmother, may her soul rest in peace, she's the one who did this to me. She said to a 7-year-old that, why don't you calculate for me how many flowers each of you collected per minute invested. She taught me how to calculate an ROI. I mean, I don't know, can you spell division when you're 7-year-old? I don't know. She asked us to do this exercise. I did it very diligently, competitive that I am. I don't remember the result, whether or not I came first in that, but clearly, the whole ROI hence started there. So it was a return on investment, on my time invested. So next was my first serious brush with ROIs. I went to a college in Calcutta. All my UG, PG, everything has been in state-sponsored colleges. So, you might have heard of a college called Presidency College. So, state-sponsored, hence fees are approximately, I think mine was about 120 rupees per month, okay? And so that was the fees I had to pay. You can imagine, hardly anything. I was staying at home, no investment there. So no hostel, no food, nothing. So after my PG, I got a job in analytics. Now, analytics, you would have heard, has been coined as being the sexiest job in the last 10 years, and data science and analytics, high paying and all of that. Can't say my first job was very high paying, but it was decently paying, right? So very low investments in my studies, get a decently paying job. However, obviously, I also had a bunch of friends who had done their B school, MBAs, economics from Delhi School of Economics, and so on and so forth, where you've invested money. Again, a little bit competitive that, they've got probably a few lakhs more than what I was getting in my salary. Hence again, the true ROI calculation. Salary that I was earning divided by the fees I had paid, because I had to come out first, right? I did come out first, obviously. I mean, 100 rupees per month is what I paid for my education. No guesses there. I definitely came out first. But that was the second ROI calculation. And now I'm going to be a little benevolent, and I will move on to your obsession with ROI. So you might be denying that, no, after seeing these examples, you might be thinking that we've also done this somewhere. But anyways, I'll come to that, your obsession. The first one, you would have paid a little bit of a loyalty, for a loyalty program on one of those apps, the food apps. But before paying that, whatever 1,000 rupees or anything, you would have done that calculation of how many times do I need to eat out, and what is the savings that is, that I will really need to drive for me to justify that spend, right? So there you did your first, one of your ROI calculations. Well, that is the same example. That is also my obsession with food. Clearly, 2 examples in restaurants. Don't look at that. But the other one is on cab rides, right? So when you got, again, a loyalty pass for one of those cab apps, you did a calculation in your mind, might not be very consciously done, but you did a calculation thinking that, how much saving was I making per ride to, again, really justify this cost. So these are just examples. You do it all the time, especially when it comes to loyalty programs. You get that voucher at one of the shopping places, at a retail, which says, next time you spend 2,000, whatever, you get a 500 off and all that. So you are doing that math all the time. So there is a lot of this ROI that is happening even in your minds. And how this habit has really helped you is, of course, smarter decision making. So, right now you're also thinking of the ROI, time invested in attending this session, etc. But smarter decision making, you're learning about ROIs and how it's important, right? So smart decision making there, right? Prudent spending. Obviously, you know where, each of your hard-earned money, each of your penny invested, you really need to consider. And hence, your reinvestment of savings. So, which other thing can you invest in? So, the amount that you're saving from your restaurant bills, can you invest that in, in another movie? So all your little investments can actually amount to your next Avengers movie tickets. Next Avengers, I don't know. Anyway. And all of this can actually come together to give you this, right? Your next holiday. So, little drops make an ocean, so your seaside holiday, etc. So that is how your ROI calculation and hence prudent investment has really helped you. So all of these savings redeployed to do something that you enjoy, no extra money invested, that is how ROIs are important. So you need to really understand, calculate, and make these smarter decisions. You're doing that all the time. I don't need to tell you. I am just spelling it out for you. Now, coming back from our regular day-to-day life to our interesting work lives, right? All of us here are associated with the media industry in some way or the other. Either you're a media planner, buyer, advertiser, whatever. So hence, now I'm going to talk about a little bit on media ROIs, right? So ROI, but why? So why? So real life I understand. I need that vacation, hence I need to understand ROIs. But otherwise, why? This was the India ADEX in 2018. This is the amount of money India spent on advertising last year. Right? This is the size of, this is what Cuba's GDP is. I mean, Cuba's GDP is what we spent just on advertising, right? So fabulous spends, massive spends. But, and also this is supposed to grow, right? This is supposed to grow by, forecasted to grow by about 15-16% in 2019 to, surpass Sri Lanka's GDP. So that little country there, devastated that it is, you are spending more than that country's GDP in advertising. Fabulous. But this is the money that is also getting wasted out of all of that advertising. How do I know this number? So we've done, so I'm from Nielsen, right? We do a lot of analytics, a lot of research. So we've done a lot of this research to really figure out that truly, globally actually, 25% of your advertising monies are wasted just because you're not putting a plan around it, no ROI evaluation, you're just going by gut feel. What I did last year, I replicate with a little bit of information here and there. So this is really the money from that previous chart in 2018 that was then wasted. Obviously, I'm just overlaying that number, but this is the potential that you could have earned, and why are you advertising really? To gain something for your brand, right? So that's what is really happening. This is how the Indian advertising spends have really been increasing, right? So this is, as you can see, India is one of the only large markets where everything is increasing. This is not happening in the US. So all your media touch points have been growing, right? And various facets within this growth, obviously led by digital. All of us know that, no surprises. But everything is growing. Also important to understand is India is still predominantly at least a 3 media market, right? So you have all your television, print, digital, everything coming at you at the same time. So it is not like one is going down, one is going up. We know these stories, and you've been attending sessions throughout these 2 days. You've heard on all of these facets. I mean, in this room, just the last 2 sessions were on print TV. So obviously, a lot is happening there. All media is coming at, all different media touchpoints coming at you. So that is a lot of things happening. Also, what we have to remember is, this year especially has been massive in terms of these events, right? You had the Kumbh, again, massive media investments. You had the parliamentary elections. Nowhere earlier have we seen so much of spends happening around campaigning, right? All of this is media investments. Next is, of course, this is that great year where you have both IPL and World Cup happening together. All of that happening together, I don't know how many advertisers are there. You know how much you are getting bombarded with going on impact properties, invest here and all of that, right? And if you're a media planner, you are doing that. But the fact is, there are so many different things happening. So all of that boom in media investments is coming from these various things, right? So what is happening in this, because of all of this, is obviously complications in decision making. This is what you and I really are, when we are wearing a consumer hat. This is really our path to purchase, right? So when you're going and buying something, it is not simply saw an ad on TV, saw an ad on a newspaper, all of that put together helped me go and make a purchase. It is not that anymore, right? You have all of these things as research online, purchase offline, ROPO, and then there's a reverse ROPO as well, where you go and research offline and then buy it online because you get a better discount. So all of these things, right? So it is extremely complicated, this path to purchase. Now, again, if you any marketers here, you know what is also happening to you. And if you're not a marketer, just put yourself in their shoes. This is what they are like, bewildered. Because they don't know now how to reach that consumer. Where do I then invest? What really makes sense to get to my consumer? I'm forgetting the question on who is my consumer. If, even after identifying who my consumer is, I really need to understand how I need to reach that consumer, what really works. You have heard a lot about, I'm sure, on the reach story, right? So, digital reach increasing, TV reach is at a certain point, etc. So there is that reach story. But really, am I getting the returns from this? Is what we need to then understand in order to make these decisions. These are the kind of words which a lot of these used to be, very high level at a certain point, but have really become common parlance now. All of this is corridor conversation. Multi-touch attribution. I mean, multi-touch attribution, it is a very complicated thing, but you just use it in the passing. Multi-touch attribution and, different kinds of creative. So YouTube masthead or an Insta story. So Facebook is coming and telling you, Insta stories really work. How do you know if it really works? Unless you go and really measure it. So the point that I'm trying to make is, all of these things are coming at you at a massive pace like an asteroid, but how do you know how to deal with it? So to decode this mystery, what you really need to understand then is, what is the bang for the buck? Understand, which is your full ROI evaluation, and also the various dimensions of the ROI. Because again, like I said, it's not straightforward anymore, right? So there are all of these various dimensions of ROIs that you really need to look at. So what you need to do is then unpeel all of these layers to really understand what that true nature of a particular medium is, of a particular format is. Hence, how do I really put it in my decision making for my brand, right? So a few aspects of ROI then, trying to peel those layers. First one, the ROI being a time traveler. That is not the time traveler suit that Captain America wore in, when he actually traveled, but apologize to the Avengers fan. Anyway, so ROI, the time traveler. So what does that really mean? Which means that ROI actually exists in various time dimensions. There are various time aspects to the ROI, right? So again, just think of it. Say for instance, we are just talking of a TV ROI, right? We are at a Zee MELT event. Let's talk about TV ROIs. So if I'm talking about a TV ROI, that TV ROI. So when you invest a rupee in TV, you are investing it for various reasons. Say you're FMCG, you want to sell that extra bottle of shampoo, which is happening because of this, but also your TV investments, all of these TV communications are helping build your equity. Now, unless that equity comes together, you will not sell this bottle of shampoo. So they can't exist in isolation, right? So there is a long-term impact of ROI, and then there is a short-term impact of ROI. This long-term and short-term can be very different for different industries. So, like we are saying here, so auto, because it's as per your purchase cycle, right? So for auto, it can be 4 to 5 years. For FMCG, it can be, 6 months to a year to a maximum of 2 years maybe. But important to remember is all your marketing will have, multiple dimensions, multiple time dimensions. So if you're only looking at an ROI in the short term, you will probably not uncover the entire truth about it, because that is really just the tip of the iceberg. What lies beneath is what you really need to then understand. Interestingly, there is another dimension to this, especially for FMCG, which is a medium-term ROI. So what happens there is just the fact that a retailer, a shopkeeper is going to stock your brand has to, that you can ensure only if there is a demand for that brand, right? So that is in the medium term. If there is no stock, there is no selling. So in order to reach the retailer's mind, like I said, the medium term, there also you're aware, your advertising communications are working. So hence all of these different dimensions of ROIs. Now what we've seen is if you look at all of these dimensions together, if my short-term ROI for a particular media is 1, if I put my long-term, my medium-term together, we have seen that can be 10x, like 10 times. Imagine, a ROI which is 2 can become 20. Because that is what advertisers are really looking at, or any media person is looking at, is really just that 2. What you should be looking at to understand whether this works or not is the 20. So understanding all of these different dimensions. Quick example from an online retailer, right? So this is how the entire customer journey works, correct? First, your communication is building your awareness. Next is you are going and visiting a website. Just think of your own journey to buy a simple pair of sneakers, right? So you are then going and visiting the website, then you're making a purchase. Now, different kinds of communications will impact these differently, right? So your brand communications are really going to impact your top of the funnel. But when you have your, a big day sale advertisement, even if you're not aware of this retailer, you'll probably just go and click on it and go and purchase something, where, that communication did not impact your upper funnel, just went directly to your, to the bottom. Hence, important to understand how each of your communication pieces are really impacting each of these things. Again, how is my ROI impact? What is the ROI at each of these levels then? The next one, ROI being the shapeshifter. right? So we know what a shapeshifter is, right? Looks like different things to different people. So ROI appears as one thing to, one thing to say you. ROI appears as one thing to you, and ROI appears as something to you. Now, why are there these different things? It is different by industries. The interpretation of ROIs. So does it always mean rupee for rupee? Like the rupee that I'm getting back for the rupee that I'm investing? Does not mean, right? I mean, even in my, stupid childhood examples that you saw, it wasn't rupee for rupee. The second one was, but no, not the first one. So essentially, any investment that you're making, and I am going to go by a rupee investment at least, but you can be getting back a lot of different things. So if I'm going to an amusement park, that ticket that I'm investing, I'm just getting back happiness or enjoyment. I can't quantify that really. But that is also a return on investment. Hence, for various kinds of industries, ROI appears or can be interpreted as various different things. For CPG, it is revenue earned per rupee invested, or whatever, per dollar invested. For telecom, it can be revenue saved by retaining customers. Right? So what are you doing for telecom? So imagine the telecom, the ARPU war, etc. that's going on now. So what are people really trying to do? On the one hand, your communication is really trying to acquire new customers, but on the other hand, you're also trying to protect your base, right? So that protecting base, this is really an opportunity cost. So my communication, so this particular ad, what I invested in it, how much did it help in holding those customers? Had I lost them, this is the money I would have lost. This is the revenue I would have lost. Hence, that can also be an interpretation of ROI. Again, say for the auto industry, right? Auto industry, again, long purchase cycle, we understand. But inquiries is an important thing, right? A test drive is an important thing. A lot of times your KPIs are, if you know the auto industry, your KPI is just that, to drive inquiries. A lot of times your communications are to drive inquiries. And then there is probably a different team who will take it on from there, once you land those inquiries. But maybe for the media guy, the KPI is just to get as many inquiries. And again, important to understand, again, through that funnel, remember, important to understand how that media is helping translate from one KPI to the other KPI. Because, another point there, so say for instance, online, right, you can have, for auto, you can have these really fancy ads, right? And I'm sure, I see the right TG here for targeting auto ads. I'm sure you've seen these really fancy ads, scroll and then, that car changes and you see all the benefits and features and all of that. Very cool. You really want to go and click on it. You click on it, that's an inquiry. Will you really buy? I've clicked on it just because I liked it. So hence, a lot of times you get a lot of inquiries, but it's important to understand what happens after that, right? So what happens next? So anyway, so that's one. And again, website traffic, which we've already discussed, where it's just the traffic driven. So media can help. So, take for instance, any of these online retailers, right? So media will help you get to that website. I see an ad and I get to the website. Whether or not I buy, there are other things that are coming into play. So hence, the main job for media right here will be to drive that traffic. Because once you arrive there, then you will compare, marketplace A, marketplace B, biggest competitors, you will first compare prices, then you will check this, that, various things, delivery time, all of those things will come into play. But traffic is the first key KPI. So hence, ROI for different industries will be, can have a different meaning. Finally, ROI being a composite power. So there is no, like I've been saying for a long time, there is no one layer to the ROI. You can't just say TV ROI this, digital ROI this, print this, and hence now let me make my media mix. You can't say that. There are a lot of other things that are coming into play, given these new formats, creatives, that this and that and all of that. So all of that coming together to make that big impact, right? So what are these different, a little bit of a hierarchical diagram there. So your marketing spends can be ATL and BTL, right? Within ATL, you have your TV, print, digital, others. But very important is this next layer. Very important to understand your next layer in terms of, so TV has your genre and publication, genre and day part and duration and so forth. Print, obviously, publication, where your print placement is, did you do a jacket ad, did you do inside, cover, whatever, those things. For digital, definitely at a platform level, I'm going to spend a little time on digital because we've seen, that's where the growth is coming from in ad spends. Very important to understand on digital at a platform level, not only at a platform level. So when I say platform, I'm not only talking about video and social and search. Within video, you have Facebook video, you have YouTube video, you have Hotstar video, you have all of these things, right? We know how many OTTs we have today. Every channel has an OTT, right? So important to understand it at that level, at a publisher level. Now also within publishers, YouTube, the different kind of assets, creative assets that YouTube has, right? They come up with something every quarter. There is something new every quarter. How do you know whether or not this is going to work? They will come and say this will work. Of course they will come and say this will work. They have done their due diligence. It is a fantastic thing. I mean, Googles and Facebooks of the world have a lot of research that goes into any of these things. So they know it works. But for you to see if your ROI is, is there or not, you really need to decode that. So understanding ROI at each of these levels is key to, getting the growth, driving growth for your brand, to optimizing your media spends. I'm not focusing on BTL, but BTL also you have trade spends, trade incentives, consumer incentives. So your extra, an extra pack, a buy one get one that you have, a 15% discount. So all of those things. It is important to understand that entire plethora of spends, evaluate ROIs, and then take a decision. So the question of the how and the so what. So all of this is fantastic to do. I know you're convinced that you have to do it now, but how do you do it, right? So I'm going to talk a little bit about how I do it because that's sort of my day job, day and night, 24/7 job. But what I do, so for ROI evaluation, essentially what we do is complex, advanced level statistical modeling, right? The best way to really judge your ROIs. No gut feel, nothing like that, just various kinds of statistical techniques to help you decode this absolutely scientifically, right? So you need science behind these decisions to truly, to drive your true investments. And all of this has to be measured at the right, at the same level. So don't read into the terms too much. This is not a platform to explain the statistics, but things like a multivariate regression where you look at everything together, everything that is driving your brand, all your inputs, and decode, the impact of each of them on your brand's sales or awareness or whatever. A network analysis. Network analysis, is essentially interdependency of media. So if I say that search works, did I just wake up and search for something? That search might have been triggered by something else, right? Could have been triggered by a print ad. So it is not then correct to attribute everything to search. I should attribute some of that to print. If you didn't have that print ad there, you might not have had the search, right? So there is a source of that. So all of these, modeling techniques, etc. So they help bring all of this together and get you answers. But this is what I do. You don't have to do this. What you get is a full understanding of ROIs and what do you do with it. One is optimization, right? So optimization of your full marketing mix to understand, so you have your various ROIs. Also, you have, where your diminishing returns is. So economics 101, I'm sure most of you know a little bit of that, is your point of diminishing returns, beyond which whatever I do, it is wastage. Again, so right now I think we might have saturated, whatever I say is plateauing off. So that is diminishing returns. So you have to understand that to understand how much is, how high is high. Digital fantastic ROIs, I know, but how? Where should I stop investing? Business strategy planning, obviously, to understand your potential sources of growth. So if I don't understand where my growth came from last year, How will I know how I need to change levers, etc., to get a certain growth next year, right? Test and learn. Now then there are, like I said, these new assets, these new formats, etc., that are coming. You need to test them to see, see if that works or not. And that just doesn't mean putting out an ad there and then just counting my website visits. Doesn't work like that. Your website visits can be because of various reasons. How do you know this is the factor which impacted my visits, right? So hence a little bit of math and science is required to give you those robust and correct estimates. And of course, the savings and reinvestment. So we've seen this for your vacation planning. So if you're doing that for your vacation planning, you might as well do it for your budget planning as well. Because what you can then do is obviously do newer things. It is not always about going and asking for more money to get growth. You can get growth even with same monies. All you need to do is reshuffle your mix a little bit. And this is, these are things, these are tools which help you do that. A very quick case study on, how one of these global auto manufacturers, they, like I said, they actually changed gears truly. So what they did was, we did a little bit of ROI analysis for these guys, and their question was, as you can see, $700 million in investment, massive investments. And, smart guys, they wanted to understand how to correctly invest, and not keep on copying year on year. So we did a little bit of analysis for them, and we realized that there was about a 126 million of revenues that they could have additionally achieved with the same amount of money. A 36% ROI improvement. No extra monies, just by understanding ROIs, just evaluating ROIs, understanding what your brands are doing for you, understanding how they can be done differently, done better, etc. So that is all that I have to really say today in terms of ROI measurement. I hope you all are a little bit excited than 30 minutes earlier about ROIs. And the point is, the essence of all your investments, if you're measuring ROIs for the investments you're making out of your wallet, you might as well also measure, evaluate the investments that you're making out of your media monies, right? So that's the whole, that is my whole submission to the industry, that together, let us come together, evaluate ROIs, and only then make truly educated decisions. Yeah. All right. Thank you. Thanks for listening in.